Hey guys, are you ready to transform your mind so you can transform your life? Coach Myrna brings you one-on-one coaching and expert guests weekly to help you to grow. Because happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy goal.
Looking for personal growth? Let's do it. For millions of businesses, Shopify helps you do your thing however you cha-ching. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Kim Kardashian Skims. Sign up now for $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/transform, all lowercase.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. John E. Lewis. And Dr. Lewis and I are going to be talking on the topic, the importance of polysaccharides for brain health and immune function. Welcome, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Myrna, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yes, I look forward to the conversation today. I get excited about learning about the body and health, and it's my favorite topic. So I will be learning right along with you listeners and those watching on TV or YouTube on this important conversation today. All right, so let me give you guys a brief introduction. With over 180 peer-reviewed publications and extensive research experience, Dr. John Lewis, founder and president of Dr. Lewis Nutrition, is a trusted authority in his field. His studies on the effects of nutrition, dietary supplements, and exercise on various aspects of human health include his groundbreaking findings surrounding the importance of polysaccharides for brain health and immune function, which led to breakthroughs with Alzheimer's, MS, HIV, and various chronic diseases. Dr. Lewis embodies the model of health he promotes to others by eating a whole food, plant-based diet for over 26 years, taking certain key dietary supplements, and utilizing a rigorous daily exercise training routine. And those of you that's on audio, I will tell you, he looks like the pillar of health.
Oh, thank you.
You're going to have to click on each video to see.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
he looks like somebody that works out and eats well.
Absolutely. Well, you have to, if you're in the health space, as you well know, if you don't look like what your message is, then what credibility do you have, right?
It's not received. I agree. So you look the part. I love it. All right.
Thank you.
So
You look great too.
Thank you. Well, I work at it too. Yeah. I was mentioning before we started recording that, of all things, I'm actually rereading, because I've read it before, the book Change Your Brain, Change Your Body by Dr. Daniel Amen. So let's set the table for all this brain talk by understanding your journey to becoming an advocate for health and wellness.
Oh, wow. How far do you want me to go back?
Whatever you think is relevant.
Well, it's funny. I was just having this conversation not too long ago about, I grew up in an era where, as a Southerner, I didn't eat for health. No one in my family ate for health. We all ate for taste. In fact, my dad did not think a meal was a meal without 3 components: a glass of milk, a piece of bread, and some form of beef. And, he could have anything else along with those 3 things, but if one of the 3 was missing, he had his feelings hurt. So that's just a little microcosm of the kind of family I grew up in. I mean, we still ate plenty of fruits and vegetables. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was just an amazing gardener. This guy grew tomatoes and okra, corn, cucumber, watermelon, carrot. I mean, that guy was amazing. Is still, I can tell you, if I start salivating a little bit when I think of his tomatoes. They were just so darn good. But
Yeah.
so I didn't have any health advocate or health model, if you will, in my family at all. In fact, my family just, middle class folks that worked hard and, tried to live well. And that was really their goal. They didn't think about health as being what it really should have been to them. And that's why all four of my grandparents died pretty miserably from different chronic diseases. My dad died pretty miserably from chronic disease. And so all of those things really, I think they had an effect on me more at a subconscious level early in my life. But then as I got older, and my grandfather, my dad's father, had, bless his heart, this poor guy's fingers were so gnarled from rheumatoid arthritis, but yet he still would get out in the backyard and pitch a baseball to me when I was just a little guy. And so that kind of put me on a path of playing sports and being physically active. And then at the same time, he was also teaching me how to read, how to write, how to count. And he was just a very, very, well, my grandmother too. I mean, both of them together, just brilliant, very profound effects on my development. And really, I give them a lot of credit for who I came to be. But the journey really, as I shifted into like grad school and no longer playing sports in high school, I got into drug-free competitive bodybuilding, and that lasted a few years, although I knew very quickly early on I wasn't willing to take drugs and, go down that path. I was not willing to take that level of risk. I also felt like, basically, and even still today, there's been only one Arnold Schwarzenegger from the bodybuilding world who really, truly ascended beyond bodybuilding into other things in life. I mean, nobody else has ever really been able to replicate what Arnold Schwarzenegger did. So, so I'm sure there are plenty of people out there making a living by it, but in terms of like really having some amazing life, I don't think there are that many. And so I didn't, that didn't appeal to me. And when I got out of the competition phase, I still compete in myself, within myself in terms of my training. I still work out hard every day, like a bodybuilding type regimen. But the shift really, I went from like a sports performance focus shifting into a health performance, because it's obvious that while if you're genetically blessed to make money at playing a sport or being, doing something along those lines, that's amazing. But all the rest of us, we still have health as our, should be our number one priority, if not one or two. And so for me, that's where my journey really kind of took off in terms of learning. Bodybuilding at least got me into if you might say, a more professional way of thinking about how the body reacts to either a nutritional approach or an exercise stimulus approach. It kind of got me into that track, even though, again, it wasn't a very long phase of my life, but it led me into then, again, getting more into a health focus phase. And then that's where I just kind of fell into academics. I didn't really plan on being a scientist or a researcher. That really wasn't what I set out to do, but I enjoyed the academic lifestyle. It was kind of, you're working in your own little business, if you will, in your own little environment. And so that kind of flexibility and freedom appealed to me in an academic setting. And I enjoyed being around a lot of, really smart and educated people. And so that led me down a path of conducting research for about 20 years. It's kind of hard to describe all in one, but I mean, between my own personal experiences of seeing my family members get really sick from eating poorly and then what they went through, and then my own interests in physical activity and then nutrition, it all kind of melded together into who I am today in terms of this path that I've chosen. And I really, based on all these experiences, I mean, for me, health is my number one focus. I have the opinion that if you don't have good health, then you're not any good to yourself or anybody else. And so I don't care if you're very wealthy or, how many material possessions you have. If you're sick and you can't enjoy them, then, what good is all that money, or what good is, having a beautiful home if you can't truly enjoy those things? So for me, I'm just very passionate about the idea of helping people understand the benefit of being optimally healthy. And then the research that my colleagues and I conducted before I left academics, just in terms of some of the discoveries we made around the use of these polysaccharides from aloe vera and rice bran, just truly, again, life-changing steps in my path, and how these particular compounds can help people achieve health as part of, I guess you could say, your toolbox, right? I mean, it's not just one thing. You have a toolbox of things that you hopefully utilize to optimize your health. And so for me, these polysaccharides have become a key cornerstone in that, and it's an opportunity to educate people about something that typically, I mean, it's like 99% of the people that I talk to about these things have no idea what I'm talking about related to these polysaccharides. And I wouldn't have known either had I not met a couple of people about 20 years ago who introduced me to their story and how they were affected so dramatically by utilizing these polysaccharides. And so even though I'm very much a strong advocate for a plant-based diet, I feel like we still need dietary supplements, and especially from these things like polysaccharides that, again, I've been researching now for almost the last 20 years. And of course, exercise is another pillar, if you will, of my approach. But I'm just very grateful to, have any opportunity to be here with you today and with your listeners and share this message that I've been on, or that I have, that from this journey that I've been on. And it's very exciting because it's actually something very simple that people can do and utilize in their busy, hectic, stressful lives, that they can still take the opportunity with these polysaccharides, if they take them every day like I do and my family does, to benefit from them. So it's a very long-winded answer. Sorry for that.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, that's when people are passionate, they can talk. I mean, being on the show where, I've got an hour show, and in 20 minutes, that's all my questions, because people give me like 2-minute answers.
Right.
So, I have to take this anyway, long-winded. But it's really, you mentioned the word polysaccharides a lot of times. I have it as part of the headline for the show. So what exactly are they, and why are they beneficial for your health? It sounds like you're saying that there are supplements, but give us the scientific approach to what exactly polysaccharides and what they do.
Well, if you've heard any psychologists refer to something called the teachable moment, this is a very significant teachable moment, where a polysaccharide is actually, in layman's terms, it's a complex sugar. But you and I both know, based on the last, several decades in the mass media, anytime we hear the word sugar, we automatically think bad, right? Like we are literally conditioned. If we hear the word sugar, we think bad. But there is a very significant problem with that, and that is all sugars are not sugars, meaning that they're very different. And so there are two key characteristics that distinguish sugars that I think it's important for people to understand, not just to throw the baby out with the bathwater every time they hear the word sugar. So instead of polysaccharide, I could have said complex sugar. Now, at this point, maybe some people are thinking, "Oh, this guy Lewis, he's a nut. I don't want to hear this message." But please bear with me and let me explain this to you. So, in biochemistry, there are three basic types of sugars. There are monosaccharides, which is the simplest form, and that's like something like high fructose corn syrup, which I'm sure all of your listeners are familiar with. You see it in literally everything today as a sweetener. That's a simple sugar that spikes your glucose, spikes your insulin. If you're eating high fructose corn syrup every day, I would encourage you to reconsider that, because that's going to set you up for metabolic problems such as diabetes, cancer, heart disease. So please, if you're eating products that contain the simple sugar, high fructose corn syrup, I would encourage you not to do that. And again, technically, that's a monosaccharide. The next form of complexity is a disaccharide, and that's something like table sugar. So that's white table sugar, which again, if you're putting a lot of table sugar into your different foods that you prepare at home, or maybe your tea or your coffee or whatever, I would also encourage you not to do that every day. And so that's the disaccharide. That's the next level of complexity.
When you think of the businesses that are selling through the roof, like Kim Kardashian's Skims or Justin Bieber's Drew House, you think about a great product or a cool brand with brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, including Skims and Drew House, that business is Shopify. Shopify helps you do your thing however you cha-ching. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business today and get the same checkout as Kim Kardashian's Skims. Sign up for $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/transform, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/transform to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/transform.
I've been a realtor for over 24 years, and it breaks my heart to see my clients get denied housing, whether they're trying to buy a home or trying to rent an apartment due to poor credit. When your credit is less than ideal, your options become limited. You may face rejection when trying to purchase a home, and when renting, you may have to settle for a less than ideal apartment or pay a hefty deposit up front. Some people think that no credit is good, but it's not. No credit is the same as poor credit. So what's the solution? Build up your credit so you can become a homeowner, get that nice apartment, get a good rate on a vehicle, or even get your dream job. Yes, top employers check your credit. Kickoff simplifies credit building with plans that are the fastest, easiest way to safely jumpstart your credit, making what feels impossible possible and no credit check required. Kickoff users with credit under 600 increased their credit by an average of 28 points in the first month. Kickoff has been praised by major finance, lifestyle, and tech publications as a smart way to build credit fast. Kickoffs have a 4.9 rating on the App Store and over 100,000 rave reviews. Build your credit fast with Kickoff, the best credit building plan to jumpstart your credit. Get your first month for $1. That's 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/transform today. That's getkickoff.com/transform. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/transform to activate offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only. Subject to approval. Average impact of 28-point increase in the first month based on Equifax Venture Score 3.0. Changes to Kickoff customers with starting credit below 600 who made their first on-time payment between January 2021 and March 2024. Payment and credit activity outside Kickoff can have an impact on your credit. Terms and conditions may apply. Offer subject to change. Individual results may vary.
And then the final level of complexity is, again, the polysaccharide that I mentioned. Now, polysaccharides are literally hundreds of glucose units that are attached together by these very complex glycosidic bonds, and they contain so much coded information in them that they are so diverse and complex that you cannot even graphically construct them. In other words, it's almost like a 5D image. They are so complex, it's literally impossible to draw them in a 3D plane. But these particular polysaccharides that my colleagues and I have looked at from aloe vera and rice bran, in my opinion, are arguably the most beneficial nutritional components or compounds or materials that any person can consume, can eat. And so when you talk about the difference between food or a dietary supplement, well, the strict definition of a dietary supplement, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture or the Department of Health and Human Services, is that it's something that supplements the diet. I mean, it's literally that simple of a definition. So it's not like eating a tomato or a watermelon or something like that. It's, literally like taking something in a form of a tablet, a capsule, a powder, a liquid even. But I don't know about you. I know no one who eats aloe vera, as an example.
I was about to say that. You can't really eat that.
Right.
Well,
Nobody.
Yeah, during the COVID, I was actually putting it in a drink because people were saying that, not people, there's this lady that came on and said that if you mix aloe vera with lemon and ginger and things like that and drink it, it gets, well, yeah, but that's the only way I would eat it. You wouldn't eat it any other way, right?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, we have aloe vera growing in our backyard, but I don't go out there and, snip a leaf and then suck down the gel. I mean, I don't know anybody who does that. I mean, if you use, and even if you thought of that, most people think of aloe vera as a topical remedy for a sunburn or a cut or a wound or something. Most people don't even think of actually consuming the aloe vera. Well, the gel is like 99% water. So the polysaccharide content in that gel is a tiny little amount. So you'd have to first take out all that water. Now you have this tiny little amount of saccharide left, along with some other materials. And then you want to get rid of those other materials where you have as pure as possible that polysaccharide content. And then you concentrate that into an amount of, a few hundred milligrams or something, where now you can consume it, eat it, swallow it, and get the beneficial effects from it. So, and then rice bran, 70 to 80% of the world prefers to eat white rice. That's just the white endosperm. So you have the white endosperm, that's the white rice. Rice bran is the layer on top of that. That gets stripped off. And then the top over the rice bran is the husk or the hull. That's the inedible part that gets stripped off first. Then most of the world prefers to eat white rice. So unless you're eating brown rice, you're not even getting any of the rice bran. The rice bran is where all the nutrition is. That gets thrown away or fed to livestock in the vast majority of the rice that's produced for the world. So people are not even getting the benefit of either one of these two plants without getting them into a dietary supplement. So I kind of lost my focus here just a little bit, but circling all the way back. So the point is that these complex polysaccharides that we've studied here at the University of Miami from aloe vera and rice bran, again, are very, very different sugars, these complex sugars that are not the same thing as high fructose corn syrup, or again, something else from, some other material that's basically used as a sweetener, or for that matter, even the other types of digestible starches that you find in white potatoes, sweet potatoes, lettuce, celery, other kinds of vegetables or grains. So those carbohydrates are also a very different type. But these particular polysaccharides, based on our research and coming from other labs around the world as well, not just from ours at the University of Miami, but there have been, over the last several decades, so many amazing and incredible beneficial effects published in the scientific literature showing how these polysaccharides can help people improve. Basically, I mean, if you want to kind of lump it into one category, these things are essentially signaling mechanisms for the immune system. And so jumping to another topic, and I'll let you jump in here, but they basically turn on different components of our immune system so that if we're dealing with whether it's trauma or infection or even something ongoing like, some kind of inflammatory condition that's gotten out of control, these kinds of compounds can help to regulate that inflammation, turn on the components of the immune system to help shut that type of bad inflammation off, or just simply boost your immune system's functioning in general. So there are lots of different effects that we've published in our research. And again, this is not just coming from our laboratory, but others. So I would encourage everybody, if I may, one last comment to this is, please do not use the word sugar in a way that it's always bad. Consider that there are other types of sugars. The two main characteristics, again, the source and the biochemical composition, really dictate whether or not a sugar is bad or good for you. So try to be mindful of that. We talk about, the use of language today and being mindful of what we're thinking and what we're doing and what we're saying. So just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. and recognize that all sugars are not created equal, and some of them are actually very, very beneficial for us, regardless of what the keto, paleo, carnivore crowd says. So,
Right. Well, it's interesting. I would not have thought aloe vera was a sugar.
right.
Wouldn't even know what to classify it. I think it's a plant or something. But when you were
Sure.
talking and going through what is it? The simple sugars and then the dye sugars.
Right.
And
Yes.
I thought of, I have known for a while that the brain functions with sugar. For instance, they say that if you, maybe have warm milk before bed, the sugars in the milk is going to help you sleep. And I also take honey, and I've always tried to look to see, because that's a sugar, whether that's good or bad. And some people say it's good for the gut and, for the brain or anything like that. So what exactly, take it down to the layman's terms here. What exactly does sugar do for the brain? The good sugars.
Well, the first, besides oxygen, which is our first nutrient for all of our cells, the brain wants to utilize glucose as its source of sugar. As its source of energy, which is true for most of our body. The problem, though, is that people are consuming all of these very simple sweet sugars like high fructose corn syrup and sucrose, so that we're having this metabolic overload where we're constantly elevating our blood glucose level, our insulin level, and this is what's leading us down this path of all this metabolic dysfunction. But again, on a very basic level, I mean, the brain wants to have, again, after oxygen, it wants to have glucose as its primary fuel to function, just like all of our cells do. So it's interesting that we get caught up in a lot of these different sort of, I don't know what you'd call them, juxtapositions about sugar, and then, oh, well, it's not good for you, but yet the brain needs glucose to function properly.
Yeah.
So
That's why I asked the question. Right?
That's right. So you have to be careful with, again, the use of the language and just putting, lumping everything into either good or bad. That sometimes can be very wrong. And so it just depends on the context. But the brain does need glucose. I mean, that's the fuel, the elemental fuel that the body wants to function off of. So if it doesn't have a ready supply of it, then it will start breaking down glycogen in the liver, which is the glycogen is the stored form of glucose. So it will break down glycogen in the liver or in the muscles to help feed it. If it gets in a really serious state, you will start breaking down even protein in the muscle, or hopefully if you have an excess of body fat, which unfortunately many Americans do today, then you can go through the process of gluconeogenesis, where you take fatty acids from adipose tissue or proteins, amino acids from skeletal muscle, and then break those down and turn them into glucose as well. So the body actually has a very elegant and just dynamic way of figuring out how to get what it needs, and it will do that. But that's why I'm not really, people talk about going low carb. I mean, to me, that's not, I just don't agree with that. I think we still need some level of carbohydrate, regardless of what all of these paleo, keto, carnivore people keep preaching. The brain uses more metabolic resources, if you will, than any other organ. So beyond oxygen, it wants glucose. So why is that? I mean, if we were not designed or created or evolved or whatever you believe in to utilize carbohydrate for our primary fuel source beyond oxygen, well, then why in the world are we that way? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to say, oh, no, you shouldn't eat carbohydrate, because that just completely flies in the face.
Yeah, I know.
Of what our cells want for energy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Everybody wants to lose weight because that's the conversation in North America. And the conversation is, carbs, if you eat an excess of it, then it goes to fat and then you get fat. But then you got to, like I said, I've known that the brain needs sugar. So that's amazing. So So we're talking about the brain health and the polysaccharides here today and immune function. So what you had eloquently and, lengthily talked about the polysaccharides and why the brain needs this particular complex carb or sugars, I should say, not carb,
Yes.
complex sugars to function. So, what are the top 5 behaviors for achieving brain health? This is just one aspect. Is there more?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I would definitely put, based on our published research, I would put the polysaccharides for brain health at the top of the list. But I think number 2, in general, you're talking about eating an anti-inflammatory diet, and probably that's really number 1. Actually, you can't, as I'm sure you know, you can't really dietary supplement your way to good health. You have to eat well. No, the greatest dietary supplement regimen in the world is not going to make up for a poor diet. So you have to eat well. And again, I know that's argumentative, and people are very defensive about their food. So we don't have to talk too much about that. But I'll just say, in general, eating an anti-inflammatory diet, whatever that means to you, that's what I would say you need to do. So that's number 1. Number 2, again, I would put our polysaccharide research up against any other research in the world, in the scientific literature, in terms of the effects we've demonstrated and documented compared to any other type of intervention. Number 3 probably is exercise. You have to move every day, even though I think a lot of people don't recognize the brain as a beneficiary, if you will, of physical activity and movement, but it absolutely is. The brain is no different than your heart, than your liver, than your gut, than your kidneys, than any other major organ. It requires you to move every single day. And so that is incredibly important. Number 4, probably sleep. You have to have a solid 6 to 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep every night. So sleep, I tell people all the time, sleep hygiene consists of making sure you have a dark room, although my wife, she has to have a little bit of light because she pees several times throughout the night. So for her, she needs a little pathway to get to the bathroom. So, I mean, whatever it is for her, we've tried 100 things, nothing works. But anyway, in general, for those of you who don't have to pee sometime during the night, you need a dark room. You need to get rid of all of the radiation, the Wi-Fi, the blue screens, whatever. It needs to be comfortable to you, whatever that temperature is, and all the other factors that go into helping you be able to sleep at night. Sleep is not just for regeneration. Sleep is actually when the body clears out all of this metabolic waste that we build up during the day, and especially in the brain. So as the brain is going through all this metabolic activity, it creates all of these metabolic waste products that if they're not cleaned out while you're sleeping, that eventually can lead you to a greater risk of things like dementia. So it's so important to sleep well every night. And then number 5, it's probably, there's so many things I could probably lump in there to number 5, but if you're still using tobacco today, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing that? Tobacco is just not good for us. Don't use tobacco, even alcohol. A lot of people think, I have my glass of red wine with dinner every night. That's healthy. Not so much. If you look at the literature, even for just a little bit, and a little bit is, of course, depending on the research you read, is a different quantity. But let's say even 1 drink per month. I forget that last article I read. It was last year, I think. It's been a while ago. But even for women, 1 drink a month statistically elevates your risk of breast cancer. So even just very sporadic, minor amount of alcohol drinking can actually elevate your cancer risk. So I don't subscribe to this notion of, a glass of wine or a beer or, this and that every day or 2 or even a couple of times a week. I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe in that at all. In fact, I have not personally had any alcohol in probably, it's been at least 12, 13 years. It's been quite a few years, and I wasn't really much of a drinker anyway. In fact, going back to my bodybuilding days, when I in college, I'd go hang out with my friends, and over the weekend, we'd go to some bar or club, trying to, meet a girl or whatever, we'd be sitting around and, having a drink or two. I mean, I just didn't even I never enjoyed the taste of alcohol. And then getting into bodybuilding, you can't hang out at 3:00 till 3:00 in the morning and try to be a competitive bodybuilder. Those are completely not compatible lifestyles.
Yeah.
So actually, that was another thing that I like to, say that bodybuilding got me out of, was just this, not that I was much of a partier anyway, but just, that sort of a lifestyle. And so I would encourage anybody out there who thinks that alcohol is, something that can potentially be healthy. Don't take my word for it. This is not opinion. Go to PubMed and do your own. Go to pubmed.gov and start looking at alcohol cancer risk. And you're probably going to be completely surprised at the research that you will read when you do that type of search. So all of those things have very significant effects, not just for our brain, but for our entire body. And that's probably how I would categorize them.
That's amazing. Like I said, I'm reading this book right now about the brain. And I've always heard about the HRT, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. It just, I have a Fitbit because it says that you should monitor your HRT, and I didn't know what it is. And just a couple of nights ago, I'm reading about, your heart rate variability of the brain and exercise. So when you're talking now about exercise affecting your brain and affecting your heart rate variability, I'm thinking, wow, right, yes. I exercise for longevity. The reason that I exercise is for longevity. I have made up in my mind that if I want to grow old, but I don't want to do it in a bed.
That's right.
I want to have quality of life. So I exercise 6 days a week based on that. And if the weight comes off along with that, that's a bonus, but it's not my primary thing. So yeah, touching what exactly is heart rate variability. So, and how is that one of the things that we're talking about here about the exercise in the brain? Is that how that correlates?
That's possible. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm no expert in heart rate variability. I actually have a good friend. He's a retired cardiac surgeon who got into heart rate variability after he stopped practicing surgery. But Leonard was educating me a lot about how heart rate variability, if you have fluctuations in that over, days, weeks, months, years, etc., it ultimately can lead to you having a greater risk of heart attack and stroke. So it's a very fascinating field. I didn't get into that line of research in my academic career, but it, is something that's definitely interesting. And it's nice that we have these kinds of tools that we can track these things today. Have you heard of the company Heart Math? I know that's one of the big companies that really pushed a lot of research to show and document how important heart rate variability is. So I think one of the things that they suggest as a tool to help people control their heart rate is meditation. I think they're big into meditation along with the exercise. But, again, as I got into my research career, I really went more down, even though exercise was probably my initial interest just because of my bodybuilding interest. But then as I shifted more into health focus, I would say I went more toward the nutrition side than I did toward the exercise side. So I don't know. I'd have to do some of my own research to know a little bit better how exercise in general affects the brain, other than the fact that we know that exercise has just so many different, let's call them global or systemic effects related to increasing or improving your circulation, which is obviously very important for your brain, your ability to have a lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, these kinds of things obviously are very important for your overall vascular health, and then particularly related to your brain. And then the ability to withstand different stressful environments or conditions. Obviously, exercise, as you get more trained, as you become more conditioned, then your body is able to withstand. even if it's not the mental stress from your work or your family or whatever, just the stress of all the crap in the environment, right? I mean, all the pollution, all the radiation, all the chemicals, the plastics, all these things that humans 100 or even before the Industrial Revolution, they didn't have any of that stuff. Now, today, we have all of this stuff because of technology and industrialization. And so all of those kinds of stressors, exercise helps us to be better at being resilient against those kinds of things, which again translates not just from, the typical or conventional perspective of the vascular system and the cardiac system, but also into the central nervous system. So it's fascinating how all those things are linked together, but I can't claim to be an expert on how actually exercise itself directly impacts central nervous system function, other than through the link between the immune system, which I find to be very fascinating. And that's basically just regulating how exercise provides a short-term stimulus that we have to deal with. So we have an elevation in some of these pro-inflammatory markers. But then once we become more trained, that stimulation gets lower and lower as we become more trained. So you don't have that ongoing sort of chronic inflammatory condition that would predispose us to diabetes or cancer or heart disease. You actually lower all that stuff. So by default, it lowers your risk of all those things, including neurodegeneration. But it's really a very fascinating link between the stimulus of exercise and then how our immune system responds to that.
Yes, well, we know exercise. I read a statistic once that says that for every hour of exercise you do, it lengthens your life by a certain amount. I'm not going to quote how much it is, but we know that exercise is important, and the people that just sit around and don't do it,
That's right.
They're not only shortening their life, but they're shortening their health span, which is a word that I learned too, that I love. Right. Okay. So, one of the things I wanted to touch on is that you've adopted a whole food plant-based diet for 26 years. And as you were talking with bodybuilding, my curiosity was, were you doing plant-based when you were bodybuilding? But even if you're not a bodybuilder, do you think that we can achieve optimum health by eating meat and dairy?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, no. When I was still bodybuilding, I was still eating basically whatever. I mean, I was very particular about my food in terms of not eating at the typical fast food chains, but I did eat chicken, tuna, and eggs and some dairy. So I was definitely not close to plant-based, but I still ate a lot of fruits and vegetables during that phase of my life. Now, if you're talking about optimizing your health, in my opinion, looking at the research, and this is my own opinion of reading the research. So obviously this is where I think people, they go down a different path. They read this and then they say, okay, it's all about eating meat. They read this and they say, okay, wait a minute, it's all about being plant-based. So in my interpretation of the literature, I mean, if you look at, and I know his book was thoroughly criticized by a lot of different people, but if you've read the China study by Dr. Colin Campbell, that was written, I think, back in 2005. It's hard to believe that's nearly a 20-year-old book, but Campbell had an incredible amount of information from his own research career and then lots of other research that he summarizes in that book that is very compelling from a perspective of eating a plant-based diet and how it will lower your risk of all sorts of different chronic diseases. So, and again, I know people have chopped that book up apart. That's, again, just an opinion or an interpretation of the research. But something more fascinating that I've read more recently is, are you familiar with Walter Longo from the University of Southern California?
No.
I would encourage you and your listeners to look up Longo's research. What Longo and his colleagues have been doing, I don't know if it's 20 years now, it's at least for the last, say, 10 or 15 years, is very fascinating, let's call it longevity research. And so they're looking at everything from, individual cells to different lower level species to rats, rodents, And now they're starting to extend their work into humans. And the one consistent message that they've come up with is that if you turn down protein, which, again, we think of protein as being so important, and certainly it is. There are essential amino acids, the 8 essential amino acids that we need to get from the diet that the body cannot synthesize on its own. But what their consistent message is showing is that if you turn down the protein and if you change giving an organism plant protein instead of animal protein, you actually extend the longevity. So you're actually able to shut down some of these genes where they're like these proliferator genes that we need to be active when we're either a fetus or a baby, or, we're still in the stage of growth and maturation. Well, once we achieve adulthood, we really want those genes to turn down. We don't want them to continue expressing, because what that does is it proliferates too much. It proliferates growth of cells. And so if your cell is going through the process of dying to be replicated, you don't want that dying cell to then turn into something mutagenic that becomes cancer later. So you want those genes to turn that stuff off when we're adults. So Longo's research is very consistently now showing a pattern, again, across different types of organisms, that if you shift to lower protein and if you shift the proteins from animal to plant protein, you actually will increase longevity, increase health. So to answer your question, based on everything that I've read, again, from Colin Campbell's work to now Longo's work, I think in my interpretation, I think it's perhaps beneficial for all of us, even if you don't want to go completely plant-based, to not rely on meat. Like, just don't make that like such a regular part of your diet. Have it maybe as a treat once a week, every other week, whatever. But the people who are eating all of this meat every single day, you are probably, again, based on all the research that I'm reading, you are probably not doing yourself a service in terms of longevity and the risks that you're exposing yourself to that will actually, to your point, knock down not just your lifespan, but your health span, because that's really what we want, right? It doesn't matter if you live to be 90, but you spend the last 10 years in a nursing home with other people taking care of you and, giving you medication every day, and you can't do anything. I mean, who wants to live like that? But if you could live to be 90 and still be a very active, productive member of society up until the day you die, that's what everybody should be shooting for. So to answer your question, I would say, based on the research I'm reading, you probably don't want to be consuming all of this meat and high protein diet every day.
Wow. It's very interesting because you said one person goes this way, one person goes that way. Most of the time that I've been in this space, I have always admired people that are plant-based, because they said, just like you said, plant-based is where it's at, fruits and vegetables, and there's all this stuff in the meat and all these things. But then recently, and I'm talking recently, I've been hearing people saying that your body needs protein, and the protein from plants is not high quality, and you need protein from meat. So I will go in and read the research that you're talking about, because you're right. It's a melting pot. Everybody has got different opinions, but I'm glad you keep saying, in your opinion, how you interpret the research, what you've been doing for 26 years, because you're coming from personal experience. I have cut down on my meat, but I still eat it.
Sure. Well, most Americans do. I mean, we in the plant-based world are still not remotely close to the majority of the population. I mean, we're still a small number of people relative to everyone else. But I tell people all the time, I mean, again, as I mentioned, I grew up in a family that ate for taste, not for health. And I grew up eating, I mean, I thought, I didn't think of beef as anything other than just a piece of meat. It wasn't anything to me relating it to like, well, that came from some animal, that was just for me food. And it was, if it tasted good, I ate it. And that was really the only consideration. So and there's nothing special about who I am. If you decide that you want to make a change, well, then just do it. Don't be concerned about what, your family thinks or your friends or even society at large. At the end of the day, it's your life and your health, and you have to make the best decision for what you believe puts you in the best position to be optimally healthy. And again, it's my opinion, it's my interpretation of the literature, but I spent probably about a year of really diving into this. This was nothing that I learned as a student in all the years of going to university. I didn't have one professor who was advocating for a plant-based diet. We were much more granular than that. We were looking at things at a very technical level, not from more of a macro level. But when a friend of mine introduced me to notmilk.com about 30 years ago, that just completely changed my life in terms of, how I viewed dairy. I mean, again, I grew up drinking all this milk, eating all this dairy. And quite frankly, I thought constipation was just the normal way of, having a bowel movement. I had no idea what a different bowel movement felt like, unless I was sick and had diarrhea. Of course, that's, the other opposite end of the spectrum.
Wow.
But when I gave up dairy, and at the point that I decided to give up dairy, I didn't even drink milk anymore. It was just eating cheese on, some dish or a pizza or something, or having some yogurt. It took about 7 days, but after about the 7th day, my bowel movement completely changed. It was a huge, huge learning moment and experience for me, and really one of those shifts that we have in life where I was like, wow. And since then, and again, that's going on 27 years ago, total difference in my life. Total
It's what they feed the cows and what they feed the animals and
that too.
Stuff that they put in there. I mean,
that's right.
Sure, it's good protein, but you're coming with the good protein with all the other stuff, all the garbage, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's a good conversation. Now we got a great conversation, but I want to touch on one thing before we wrap up. And it is the standard American diet. I don't even know why we need to discuss it, but it's part of the things
right.
We all know that it's crap, and it's junk, it's whatever. So what do you want to say about the standard American diet?
Well, I mean, it's just, it's so sad. I mean, if anything, like you travel to another country and you go out to a typical restaurant at another country, and the serving size will be like, this. In the American restaurant, the serving size is like this.
Yeah. And
your typical American is mad when he or she is served something and they're like, wait a minute, that's too small. Like, I'm paying $20 for this. I should be getting a big serving of whatever it is they eat. But yes, I mean, I know how controversial and argumentative the topic of food can be for people. People get so defensive about what they eat and their attachment to it. But we just really have individually. I mean, for me, it doesn't matter what the government mandates or what the government, tries to do at some national level. It really requires me and you and everybody else we know at the individual level. We have to take personal responsibility, personal accountability for our health. And the number one thing that we can do to affect that is what we stick in our mouths. And so as best as we can, we have to avoid the temptation of all these, typical things that Americans want to eat. I mean, just soda, for example. I mean, my gosh, just if you're drinking soda like cigarette smoking, I mean, why in the world are you drinking soda? Kick out the soda and just, it was kind of like for my shift to going plant-based, like I didn't try to do it like that. I gave myself time to adapt to it and to sort of acclimate. And again, we're talking 27 years ago. So this wasn't when you have now all of these plant-based options for so many different things. This was a whole different era. But if you feel like you're struggling with changing your diet and trying to improve what you're eating, just do one thing and then give yourself time to adapt to that one change. And then when you feel like you've comfortably allowed that to blend into your routine, then do another change. So whether that's eating something green every day, or drinking plenty of water every day, or eliminating soda, eliminating candy, cookies, whatever it is, try to just set simple baby step goals for yourself. And then once you feel like you've achieved that, then make another one. And guess what will happen? Over several months, over a couple of years, you have completely transformed yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Right. Yes. But that's all right. Baby steps. So that's amazing. Dr. Lewis, this has been so exciting. I love talking about this conversation, like I said, from the beginning. So, all right, let's bring it back full circle. So you talk about these polysaccharides. So tell our listeners where they can connect with you. I'm assuming that you have an offer in order for them to pick up some of these polysaccharides. Tell us about your website, social media handles, or whatever else you want to leave with us today.
Thank you so much for that. I would say the best source of information about me, my research, and our products is at drlewisnutrition.com. That's drlewis, Lewis, nutrition.com, and there's no period after the DR. But we have all sorts of information there talking about the research my colleagues and I conducted, the creation of Daily Brain Care, which is our flagship product based on all of that research. I put my name on my brand, on everything that I sell. So I want people to understand that I use it. My family uses it. I've had my mother, my wife, my daughter. My wife's pregnant again. She's taking it. I mean, everybody, this is not, for me, this is very personal. And I'm not a marketer who's just trying to make a buck. I'm actually trying to spread a message that includes the product. I mean, I'm not trying to go poor either, but this is something that I feel very passionate about that can help all of us be more optimally healthy. And you can go to YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the typical social media channels have, the Dr. Lewis channel there as well. And you can contact me through either the social media channels, or we have a phone number and an email address on our website. But I think anybody who goes there will hopefully be impressed with all the information that we've put there. And again, I'm trying to help people understand that health really is your wealth, and you need to be in daily pursuit of it. And the body is not going to take care of you later in life if you don't take care of it now when you can. It just won't. And so we need to do these things every day to be healthy, and it's very important for us to do that. But please go to our website, look at the information, go to any of the social media channels, look at the videos we're posting, and hopefully people will be encouraged and want to try Daily Brain Care and see what the benefits of this product are and how it can make a difference in their lives.
Well, I will tell you, you've sold me. I will definitely.
Excellent.
20 supplements, but obviously not taking the records. And because I'm from the Caribbean, I know about aloe vera. I have a plant in my yard too, but I only use it for wound care or for skin rashes or something like that. And way back, people were talking about drinking aloe vera juice. So, what you're talking about, they don't eat it, but they drink it. So I know the benefits of the plant. So yeah, you just sold me. I'm definitely going to go on and pick up some bottles of the polysaccharides and whatever else you have on your brand, that's your Daily Brain Care. So that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I have adopted for, all my life, actually, that, health is wealth. It's funny you use that.
That's right.
Health is wealth. A couple of nights ago, my husband, he got up out of bed and his foot was dead, numb, and he kept falling. And he took one step and crashed, and then he went another couple of steps and crashed. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, what happens if you can't walk? What happens if, because sometimes like multiple sclerosis starts like that. All of a sudden you falling, you can't walk. I mean, it is a scary thing to know that your health could be, and then what are you going to do? You're right. No amount of money in the bank is going to help you. So
that's right.
I love that. Right.
Amen for that.
Yes. Yes. Well, listen, Dr. Lewis, like I said, this was an amazing conversation. I loved it. I will definitely thank you for sharing this with me and the listening audience, because we need brain health. We need immunity. We didn't talk about the things that, like we said in your introduction, this helps with Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis. Funny, I just said that. HIV, and all of the various chronic illnesses that are brain-based, right? So
right.
Take care of your brain, it will take care of you.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly.
Right. So, amazing. All right. Well, listen, guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind so that you can transform your life. We've been talking about transforming your mind, about your nutrition, about your longevity, getting rid of the standard American diet. It's interesting. I have taken out soda for a long time because everybody talks about the sugar, and they're saying, did you know there's like 4 spoons of sugar in a Coca-Cola? And whenever I go to the groceries and I see people loaded up on soda, I look at them, I'm thinking,
I know.
Did you get the message, the memo?
I know. It's unreal.
I think it's amazing that people still drink soda, even fruit juices. I thought I was better by drinking fruit juices, but fruit juices are just as bad. I don't buy them either. But so this conversation, bringing awareness to anything, to me, is the first step, right? You can't change anything unless you're aware of it. And what I do here is bring the awareness of conversation to people. Whether they make a change or not, it's up to them. But, one of my favorite quotes is that a brain that's been expanded with knowledge can never go back. Even if they don't change, they're aware of it. They know it. And then when they maybe drink a soda, something in the back of their mind is saying, you shouldn't be drinking that.
That's right. And they can't say ignorance is bliss anymore either.
No, exactly. Because you know better, right? And if you know better, you should do better. So this has been an amazing conversation. I love it. There's going to be a transcript of my conversation with Dr. Lewis on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to Dr. Lewis's website, his social media channels, so you can follow him. I'm almost sure that he has, educational videos on there about this stuff all the time. So he says that there's an email on his website as well. Like, if you have a question, because, like you said, it's hard to get up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to cut out meat and dairy and eggs and cheese and all these different things. It is a process, and some people cut out a little bit. I mean, you're talking about how your, bowel movements change and all that. I remember having lunch with a friend of mine, and she was telling me she had pains all over her body, and she cut out all those things, and now she's pain-free. So I've seen people, I know people that have gone plant-based, and, because it's the meat and things, they're inflammatory. So when you cut them out, you cut out all the stuff that comes with pain and body aches and autoimmune diseases and things like that. So we know these things, right? We know these things.
Exactly.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I love what I do. I love having these fascinating conversations. I'm all excited. I can't wait to make changes.
Thank you for having me.
And I teach. I'm going to be sending my family to go take some of these things too. So that's
Absolutely.
Amazing. Yes. Well, all right, Dr. Lewis, before we wrap up, any last words?
Well, just thank you, Myrna, for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you and have this conversation. And I just, for anybody out there struggling with health, I mean, please don't give up. As long as you can still breathe and swallow and, have your own faculties, I mean, you have your power. So don't give it away to somebody in a white coat. To do your own research and make sure you're making the best decisions for your health, because ultimately that is your most important characteristic besides time in this life. So do whatever you can to protect your health. And again, if there's anything that I can do for anyone, I'm very reachable. So I'm happy to be of service.
Awesome. I love it. All right, guys. Well, listen, this has been an exciting episode. Hope you learned as much as I did and that you go out and make a change. All right. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you.
Until next time, namaste.